I'm Reagan Barr, speaking for Mackenzie Barr. I'm just going to be saying the questions and anything she wants me to say later on.
My name is Mackenzie Barr, and I'm interviewing retired Sergeant Major Barr.
First question, what is Counterdrug?
Counterdrug is a program which the Department of Defense established in the late 80s. Approximately 1988, it was officially put into the National Defense Act for appropriation of money. And from that point on, both active component forces, reserve component forces, and National Guard participated in support on the war on drugs and was formalized under President George Bush the Senior and established operational phase in 1989.
Okay. Can you please reiterate in simpler terms what all of it is?
What it all is in the 80s, the United States government declared war on drugs, primarily for the smuggling of cocaine and other drugs such as heroin and some other illicit chemicals and drugs into the United States, primarily focused on the explosion of the cocaine trade from Colombia, South America, through Mexico, and through the Caribbean. And so at the time, both the Drug Enforcement Agency, United States Customs, and several other federal agencies did not have enough resources, equipment, and intelligence gathering capabilities to interdict the drug smuggling, as well as the local and federal agency task forces were limited on some resources of equipment and expertise to engage in the drug fight.
Why did you want to join Counterdrug?
Well, at first, I didn't even know what I was joining. I had finished one assignment, and we were doing an Op 4 exercise against OCS Cadets, and I was not looking forward to going back to what I was doing, per se. And somebody said, hey, if you would like to try to do something a little different, if you report to the G1 or G3 office on Monday morning and meet with Sergeant Major Brocious at the time, they're looking at a operational mission. So Monday morning, I showed up, attended a formation, had to do a bunch of paperwork to fill out for a background check, and they said, hey, you're joining this opportunity to provide support under the drug interdiction process that is being formed nationwide, as well as specific Joint Task Force 5 and Joint Task Force 6. And so that's how I began, not knowing what I was joining into, instead of going back and just continuing just the ordinary military aspect.
Okay, since you didn't know what you were first joining and what you were going to start in Counterdrug, how long did you stay in it?
On and off, approximately 25 years.
Okay, so when you first started, what was your role in Counterdrug?
I was assigned to support United States Customs an immigration agency in identifying targets and detecting narcotics. One of the things that we did was we would do ship boardings out prior to them arriving to ports of entry, as well as I did some ground reconnaissance operations along both the northern and southern border of the United States, as well as provide a training mechanism for federal agencies.
When you say training, what did you come up with?
We developed a capability of our ground reconnaissance skill set, as well as our capability of enhancing their search capabilities of different vehicle carrying capabilities. In other words, what the bad guys would smuggle it in.
How did you train for it?
How did I train for it?
And anyone after?
Okay. Well, we were all sent in and out of different flexi courses, federal law enforcement education center courses, to learn what their skill set was, and then we took what our military skill set was and merged it into a common utilization tool or objective capability. Now, there were certain skill sets that we all possess naturally with our military that we use to teach the various agencies that we're supporting, i.e., all DEA agents at that point in time that operated in Colombia and South America would go to Fort Benning, Georgia, and be trained on special small unit tactics, how to move, how to locate each other and train, how to use hand and arm signals to be able to move into position. We would then expand that capability. Plus, we had certain night vision devices and other pieces of equipment that the federal agencies and some task forces wanted to use to enhance their capability, so we would teach them how to use our equipment.
What was your day-to-day kind of working for them like?
Over the years, it changed depending on what I was doing. A lot of it was we would identify a potential operational support mission or an operation that we needed to support, and then it would be a tactical planning scenario that we would have to develop. We had modified, instead of going at it from a combat aspect, we would modify it to our tactical capabilities and resources to then modify it to meet their civilian and federal law enforcement objective, which was our goal was not to close in and destroy the enemy. Our goal was to close in, identify their movement, and then if we could take off their loads of either money going out of the country or dope coming into the country, or to be able to track the movement of it and try to help them identify bigger targets.
What are raids like? And what do they entail?
Okay, it depends on if you're looking at it from a military tactician in a combat environment or if you're looking at it from the drug environment. Since we're talking about the drug environment, the difference between the military tactical raid and the law enforcement aspect of the support mission and operations are, when we raid during combat operations, we're going in and if need be destroy or capture or eliminate what we are going into. In the support or operational role in the counter-drug arena, Raids are the same thing as any police or narcotics raid. It's attempting to take down the element in which is doing the smuggling with no loss of life and no destruction of evidence. So your goal is to provide that support depending on what it is, whether it's CONUS or OCONUS. CONUS is continental United States. OCONUS is anything outside the continental United States. So there's two different levels of operations. The operations that would result in certain raids, as they were called, were to seize the narcotics or information that could lead to where the smuggling was originating from, i.e. outside the continental United States. The cartels, both in Colombia and eventually in the Central and South America area, as well as other organizations that were coming from Southeast Asia. So you would focus in on your intelligence gathering capabilities, provide that additional resource and equipment, and then the federal agencies would conduct their raids. If need be, we would provide support with appropriate military equipment that were authorized by the Secretary of Defense to conduct that support, whether it be ISR capabilities or whether it be personnel or whether it be intelligence or whether it be ground reconnaissance capability.
So in all of that, what were you doing?
On certain parts, I would do ground reconnaissance operations. So early phases, I would provide ground support to ground reconnaissance capabilities with additional resources that could be used, i.e. night vision, thermals, some communication packages, also providing additional personnel because some of the agents were limited on the number they could provide to an operation. We would work with other countries, other local elements, being a bridge with the federal agencies to assist them in the resources they needed to conduct their operation. There was a period of time I did long line operations, which is with helicopters where you hook a couple guys on 250-foot rope below a helicopter, would fly into drug remote locations, and we would identify where they were prior with other capabilities, do the long line, get off the long line in either the mountainous or wooded areas or water areas, and then we would assist to guide the federal agencies into the geographic location where the target was, and then turn it the next phase and be a support to them as they entered into either the clandestine lab or the other drug operation that was going on. And then we were also responsible to train all DEA agents that were sent into Southeast Asia, primarily the Afghanistan sector, after 8 agents were killed in Afghanistan in 2007. So then we were responsible to train all and certify all DEA agents going into an area where U.S. military forces were operating prior to their arrival. So we taught them on all military equipment, how to do life-saving, combat life-saving techniques, communication, how to call military helicopters and other resources, since the United States military usually provides all DEA elements overseas with ODA teams in certain operations, which are all United States military personnel.
What's the biggest raid you've helped with?
In excess of $50 million worth of wholesale product.
Okay. Moving on from that, what are the rankings like in Counterdrug? Are they different from what they would have been if you weren't in Counterdrug?
Yes, you're limited on your promotion capabilities.
What were your promotion capabilities?
If you got promoted out of the team size, so you'd have the structure that was built by the teams, said this rank here is the team leader, this rank here is assistant team leader, whatever that rank structure was based upon, since we were not part of the direct fund of personnel funding. So the Department of Defense has a personnel authorization funding table. It says this many active duty, this many AGRs, this many title personnel, and it's funded, and everybody has their table of contents that says this is the rank you can be. We were only authorized 4,000 personnel. So we had to ensure that what we were appropriating into the Department of Defense money, operated by the Assistant Department of Defense Secretary for the global threats, he would give us an X amount of dollars, and that's how many personnel. If you had too high of rank, you had fewer personnel. So you built a chart like a pyramid, and it was a very pointy pyramid. So there were only a couple people at a certain rank on the top, and everybody else was a lower rank. We tried to maintain E5 and E6 rank as the worker bees. We did not have people that were below the rank of E4, because we wanted you to have enough life experience that you were mature, because you were responsible for yourself, your team members, and the operation. So when you joined, you had to give us your password to your, at the time, MySpace account, which is, you have Facebook now.
Instagram?
No, your personal account. So at the time, you have a Facebook account, right? Back then, a lot of people would have a MySpace where they post pictures and they communicate back and forth. Other people, as Facebook came around, we would ask you for your password, and if you didn't give us your password, we'd break into your account every quarter.
Record it?
Every quarter. You have 4 quarters in a fiscal year.
Okay.
You were subject to a polygraph every other year. You were subject to a urinalysis test on call. You were subject to having all of your criminal background checks done quarterly. So 4 times a year, if you got a speeding ticket, I knew it. If you came up hot in a piss test, you were court-martialed immediately. If your Facebook account showed that you had said something about an operation and disclosed something, you would be court-martialed. So the pyramid was very narrow. Each team had a team chief and it also had a commander. And then it just worked its way down to additional teams.
Have you ever had someone who has lied about any of the stuff you just said?
Oh, yeah.
What did you do to them?
Destroyed their military career. Or had them arrested by CID.
What if it was like a little thing? A small thing.
What do you consider small?
What was considered small in yours?
If you didn't tell me about a speeding ticket in time.
So they could get fired.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of questions were they asked during like a
Polygraph.
polygraph thing?
Have you ever taken any drugs?
Okay.
Have you ever broken the law? Have you ever lied? Have you ever cheated? Have you ever stolen? Have you ever, and as you go along. So polygraph, one of the things we tell them is if you think you can hide the fact that you ever used marijuana, you're going to get caught. So if a person would say, yes, I've used marijuana, well, how long ago? If it was within a short period of time prior to joining the military, we might just go, okay, you're not doing it now, you better not be doing it going forward. But if they said, well, yeah, I did it prior or on leave one day from my previous military assignment, we would immediately take disciplinary actions for separation, because you're not supposed to use drugs in the military. So thus, your integrity is already in question. And then if you had broken any other civil laws or anything like that, you would immediately, if you didn't come forward, so it was not uncommon if somebody got a speeding ticket that would call in and say, hey, I got a speeding ticket last night. Or they would turn around if they got arrested because they were doing something stupid. They would definitely call right away, usually while they were in booking.
So that you're like the one phone call it would be to you guys.
Not to mom and dad to get me out of jail. It'd be to us. Let us get you out of jail and see if we're going to keep you and save your military career.
So if you did, like, when you said like cheating or like the other ones, if you did, like, if you have cheated or whatever, it wouldn't destroy you. But if you lied about it,
you might not be accepted on my team.
Cheating, like, what if you cheated on a test? That's technically cheating.
It depends how I ask the question.
Okay.
When I used to talk to people and ask a question, I'd ask a question 3 times. I would modify the question each time, but the answer is still the same. But if I asked you a question and you gave me a certain facial expression or you looked away a certain direction, I knew you were lying, so then I would change the question to the point. It was always better because before I ever talked to anybody, I'd already done a background check on you.
Okay. What did you come out of, like, what rank were you when you came out of Counterdrug?
Command Sergeant Major.
Is that the top of the top?
It's the highest enlisted rank that you can get. Then it's by assignment. So you make Command Sergeant Major and then it's by assignments. So my last functioning area of Counterdrug, I was the national training supervisor for ground reconnaissance operations, and I was the deputy team chief in charge of training of DEA for Afghan skills. So in other words, I would fly when I'd have to have coordination things or money. I would fly to the Pentagon or the JP1 or DEA headquarters, and I was the guy that would write the budget.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about in Counterdrug that we have not covered? Is there any funny story you would want to talk about?
Man, there was a time in Thailand when somebody had blood soup up in the northern part of Thailand, and because we were training the Thai security detail responsible, equivalent to their United States Customs, we were doing support for the country desk out of the embassy, and Thailand's divided into 5 tigers. They call it 5 tigers. They're generals. They actually run a part of the country. So we were with one of the generals, one of the 5 tigers up in the northern part near Burma, Laos, Cambodian border area, and we had built a live fire range for him. We thought everything was good to go. He took us to a meal, and so they provided us this blood soup, and it is blood from some weird thing. And then there's cobra meat. They bring the cobra, let the cobra go, and the guy has to catch it and kill it. But they also give you this weird little something, and it's probably the strongest thing you will ever drink in your life. And one of the guys partaked a little bit too much. The next thing you know, he was outside and he was leaning up against the wall, but he kept complaining that the wall kept moving. Well, in our best ability to see down the alleyway, we realized that the wall he was complaining about moving was an elephant. And so we were like, yeah, dude, I think you need to come towards us. So we would try to find ways to relax when you're doing operations and stuff. So we would have beard growing contests when we would be out in really remote places. We would all shave right before getting dropped off, and we would have a contest to see who could grow a beard the quickest or the mustache the quickest. There were other times where you turn around and, there was one time that we realized that we were set up in a place where there was some sort of wildlife. We determined it was a bear. And we determined it was a mama bear.
Uh-oh.
And that we determined that mama had a cub bear.
Uh-oh.
But yet we were close enough to our area of operation. We couldn't move and we couldn't get out. So we had to sit there and figure out how to deal with mama and baby bear for 10 days.
Oh, God.
So you find entertainment in some things as much as possible. In Afghanistan, I would find entertainment by going to the DEA component and the Afghan commandos that were there, because DEA had their own private chefs. So for a person who was eating Afghan food and living with Afghans to go find an actual chef in the middle of the mountains of Afghanistan with the DEA agents in which I had participated over the several years training, and to be able to get a free meal from a fully qualified chef in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, I thought that was cool. It was almost as good as watching my guy complain about the wall moving down the alleyway that was an elephant. Does that answer some of the questions?
Okay. So when you're in Counterdrug, was there ever a time you're like, did that just happen? Or like anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
I had the wrong guy get in my vehicle.
Anything else you wanted to talk about Counterdrug?
Don't do drugs.
Thank you for coming and speaking about Counterdrug.
You're very welcome.